to be doing what we do. And I think everybody should be able to see my screen now. And like you heard, my children are the ones who kind of keep me on my toes. And when I think I might have something figured out, they go and they become teenagers. So this was a really good opportunity for me to learn a bit more, remind myself what it's like being a teenager. And that's why we're doing this this particular topic. And also as a clinician and working with clients and teens, I think that our jobs, many of ours in whatever role, is to be an advocate. And this has been an interesting time to work with families, especially during coronavirus, but adolescents are exciting, powerful, changing, and all of these things, which I'm very grateful for this opportunity. So thank you for everyone that's participating, and to Sandy Pines too for helping us organize. So let's
Ms. Karen.
Yep.
Are you able, we're hitting forward on our, oh, there we
There
go.
it
There we
goes.
go. We just didn't click it hard enough. There we go.
Okay.
Thank you.
So everyone knows what we're here to discuss, and our topic and title is Understanding Adolescents, Their Brain, Their Vulnerabilities, Their Strengths, and how as a community, and this is a really great opportunity, especially on this forum with so many different people from schools coming, from different clinics, parents I'm hoping are joining. This is a great opportunity to look at how as a community we can really help to understand teens, and also to be part of a positive protective factor development for them. I will start by saying a few things that I've learned during this time as I was researching made me realize that research for teens is quickly changing. There's a lot of information, and we're in a good place right now to really be having these conversations. Adolescence, obviously, of course, means many different things to different cultures. The more I researched, the more I realized, wow, we're all kind of just doing our best, but we all have different parts of the information that we need. So hopefully this will be kind of an overview and give an opportunity to understand parts of the brain, why different parts may be motivating different behaviors, and some general tips and ideas that we could do. And I will also start by saying, I did ask a few teenagers, what did they think about this topic? And it was very funny to hear some of their feedback. Well, one of my sons said, I think we should tell teachers that homework takes a lot longer than they think, and we need more time to have fun, which I think he's right in that, and we'll get to that. But I think it's a big topic, and I'm going to do my very best to kind of shed some light on some important topics that I hope will be helpful. Okay, so let's start talking a little bit about what is this paradox. And you may not call it a paradox. People call it turbulent time, difficult time, challenging, wonderful, productive, busy, and all of those things are true. And I think one of the biggest confusions for both adults and for teens and for people who work with adolescents is, what is this time period? They sometimes act like an adult. They look more like an adult than others. And there are a lot of different things going on that I think makes it feel very confusing for them and for us. It is certainly about a paradox, and the teenage brain is exploding with creativity and growth. It is a powerful peak of growth that only happens once in a lifetime. So that is a key, and I think everyone should be able to also see kind of the paradox I'm talking about. Even though teens are undergoing dramatic changes in their physical, emotional, and psychological growth, they are also incredibly susceptible to mental illness, to drug use, and to risky behavior. So I think that as you hear me speak, you'll see this tension going between kind of, oh, it's an amazing time, it's wonderful, we can do all of these things, let's help them, with, oh, but wait, there's some risk involved, and oh, how do we help them? They don't want to hear us. So I purposely put this slide here because I think it's an important point, is that there is, if you feel confused and you feel like there's like a lot of tension right now, there is, and they feel it too. So we do know that there is something inherently confusing and paradoxical when we look at teenagers. And we know this a bit from their behavior, And we know this a lot from how they go from not wanting us, closing the door, and then the next thing we know, they're asking for our help because they can't find their shirt that's right in front of their face, right? Or their book that they had and now they've misplaced. So there's this like tension that I just want to reiterate. I think it's important, and I think it's important to meet teens and, well, all clients, but teens where they are. They're not, they're not doing this to us. This is something that they're going through. So keep that in mind as we move forward with the presentation. Okay. So, geez, multitasking is not my strength.
Doing good.
Okay. So this could be a very dense slide, and I don't want it to be, but I do want to share some key topics that really open my eyes when I think about teenagers. First of all, for many, many years, we had a lot of information about young children and geriatric brains. We knew a lot about that. MRIs had been, Alzheimer's, there was a lot of research. It was good information we were learning. Around that time, people got very into baby Mozart, Einstein. You see early literacy programs. This is all really important. I cannot stress enough how important it is. Those things still remain important. But what I think started to kind of happen now is that we got an ability to look inside the brain with the fMRI. And I think that the slide shares some of that. And what a lot of researchers and people are now talking about more is we see the outside of the teenager, it's changing drastically. And you see this all of a sudden you don't see them for a summer and then you do, and they're really tall. And of course they're going through puberty, things are changing on the outside. But what is even more powerful is if you start to think about what's going on in the inside. So it's not really just the body, although that's what's most visible and they are very aware of it. The brain does develop from the back to the front, and that's an important thing to consider, especially when we talk about the prefrontal cortex, which is right in the front. And this is used for higher order thinking. So it's like cognitions, planning, judgment, weighing my options, right? Looking ahead, how to handle tasks, how to handle difficult situations. That would be happening in the prefrontal cortex. And in an ironic twist of fate, that is, if we're developing from the back to the front is happening last. And that is, the prefrontal cortex is in the front. So again, there should be some of you saying like, wait, what? That's not right. We should have, that needs to be developing when they're being faced with all of the stress and schoolwork. And well, this is the way it is. And this is part of this paradox that I talked about a bit. Simultaneously, what's happening is the limbic system, actually where emotions are kind of housed, and the heightened sense of emotion too happens there. This is stronger and develops sooner and quicker than the prefrontal cortex. So this was a big eye-opening I had read it and I didn't really read it and think about it until I had my own teenager now. I was like, whoa, that has some big implications for how we help our teens, right? Like they may be having a lot of emotional intensity and yet their brain is not really designed yet or programmed yet to really say, why is this a bad thing? Why is this, should I do this? Is my feeling rational? Is this fair? Am I just reacting? And people say all the time, they're so selfish. Well, if you think about it in context to the brain, it's not really a selfish or self-centeredness. It's more of they have a strong feeling about things and they feel very strongly, and their front part of their brain where there's all this executive functioning, it really just hasn't caught up at all yet. So it makes sense that they would feel that way. In addition, so those are very specific changes that I want to talk about. And there's a lot more, and I'm not a doctor, so I don't want to say something out of my scope, but I can tell you that those changes in the brain are important. But there are also some more global changes that I think are exciting, important, and necessary to understand. One of those is the myelination increases. This is what helps the neurons in the brain connect quickly to each other. So they're at an all-time peak when they went through adolescence. So the parts of the brain and the information is being connected quickly. So If we think that they are able to process quickly and learn quickly, we're right. They are very quickly. This is kind of at the peak of this time. And this is also why learning is, if we could help our kids understand, you are never going to be this powerful. Your brain is really primed to learn right now and retain new information. And then again, with a paradox here is that there's also a synaptic pruning that is happening ongoing during adolescence. And the best way that I could understand it and explain it to myself is that this is kind of when you're pruning a tree, the information, the messages, what you want to reinforce, that those kinds of messages and information is being reinforced and strengthened. They say that if you don't use it, you lose it. Right now, this is the time. So this makes adolescence a very powerful time, but also I would argue it makes it a very sensitive time to what we teach them, what we want to reinforce, what we want them to learn. It is kind of an opportunity to say, you can specialize. The brain is beginning to specialize. If you do not, and the best way to think of it is if you don't use it, you lose it. So when we think about the things that the kids or teens are starting to really spend a lot of time doing, it makes us wonder, wow, do we want them watching all these, YouTube or whatever, or how do video games affect this? This is a time where there's strong responses in the reward system in the brain. So whatever they're doing, and they're doing a lot, will certainly without question be reinforced in their brain if it feels good, even more so. And then this will become part of what their neural makeup in their brain is. So this pruning opportunity or a challenge, I guess depends on how you say it. You should really think about it as the brain remodeling. It's active, it's happening. You can learn things quicker here. And the main change is really the connections that are being made, how quickly information can go from one to the other, and also how amazingly important this time period is, especially when you think about making decisions and risky decisions and what that means and the implications for what that means. And you could go on this for a long time if you start to think about, are they adults? What age are they adults? Are they able to make good decisions, and how do you know? Every teenager goes through this at a different time, but we definitely know that what we thought previously, which is, if you look at an adult brain and a teen brain, they're going to be kind of the same. That's not true at all. Adolescents' brains are going through remarkable remodeling. They are powerhouses, actually. And it's important to consider that when we're talking to them. So knowing what we kind of know about teenagers and their brain and a very intense kind of period of change. And also, of course, I'm using generalities. So some teenagers have more development at certain points than others. But what we do know is that this is kind of a perfect opportunity and a perfect storm, right? The connecting is super important. And what they see and what they get reinforced is also getting reinforced in their brain. So this next slide is important because you can leave this behavior. Okay, so when I started to think about, well, okay, we understand the brain is changing. We understand it's a sensitive time. Great, that's important. That's phenomenal. What does that mean? What does that look like if you're a teacher or if you're, a therapist or if you're a parent? Well, a few things. Number one is whether you look at it from an evolutionary standpoint or you look at it from the brain or you just look at the teens that you start to realize that there's a distinctive shift that begins to happen, right? Parents go from being their primary caregivers, so the teens go to them for food, for love, for all of these connections, and that's really great, and we don't want to lose that. But there's something that starts to happen that kind of pushes or reinforces teens at this age, at adolescent age, to begin to move away from the parents as a primary person and look to belong and find their peer group and really find people with whom behaviors are reinforced, that they feel that they can belong. And there's some quotes that you can see on the screen, but there's something about the brain during adolescence in mammals that is hardwired to be especially sensitive to peer influence and to be more reward seeking in the presence of peers. And that's not necessarily new information. I think everybody probably knows that. But what I didn't put together was right at the time where I know that they're going to be looking for peers is also a time where I'm saying whatever they reinforce will be reinforced more so in their brain. And they don't have the ability to say this is a bad decision. And that's where, again, there's some tension between membership is important, but not over morality or morals. But for teens that need to belong and be part of something, whether you agree or think about the evolution kind of demands, the demands that they have, there is certainly without question a lot of pressure for them, and whether it's internal or out, they want to belong, and what their peers say and what they demand and how they speak, you'll see it. It's like a contagion sometimes. My kids started using words. I don't even know the words there. It's like a new language. And I'm like, where did you learn this? Well, it's something that it's almost like a culture within a culture. Peers are extremely powerful. And kind of, there's lots of different ways that you can illustrate this, but one really important way I thought was to take a look at this kind of graph and look at what the power of peers can do and what it looks like. And this was a study that was done, and I'll just briefly kind of say a bit about it. When teenagers are with a friend, or if they thought there was a friend in the area, or if they even thought a friend was watching them from far away, the impact they have over how they do on tasks is huge. And you can see this with number of crashes. And this is one of the reasons why I think I finally put 2 and 2 together, why my parents didn't want me driving with my friends when I got at 16, because the amount of crashes or automobile accidents that occur if a teenager is with a friend is, you can see on the graph is this green alone versus with friends. It is, really eye-opening. And this has all been looked at in depth and kind of analyzed through this use of fMRIs and the neuroimaging to see, even if they thought, they started to, in this study, they moved the people further away, their friends further away, to say, how much impact do they really have? And if they even thought their friend would find out about what they were doing, it would still impact how they did on various tasks. So in a real life kind of, opportunity to talk about this, just this peer pressure with peers, they're just being there. There's peer presence has a huge impact with, unfortunately or fortunately, you can use this to empower them with how they drive and the number of risks they're going to be willing to take as they drive. So I thought this was extremely important as far as a predictive kind of empowering opportunity to let them know their brain is kind of primed to really care a lot about what their peers say, which is maybe a reason not to be driving with peers right away. There's enough data to be significant. Another interesting kind of paradox or information is there was a research study done, and then I'm giving you a very high level, just quick overview, but I think it's an important topic to just look at, is that teenagers were shown the same pictures that some adults were shown. And while the adults were quickly able to label the emotion, and it was like, there was a picture of a face and it was someone who looked scared, and the adult would say scared. Now, what the teens were doing, which was very interesting, was that they were kind of saying scared and angry. And so they were able and saying multiple emotions at the same time, that they were looking at the same picture, but felt a lot of different things in that one moment. And what does that tell us? Well, it does tell us that it's possible that an increase in co-experienced emotions makes it really difficult for the teenagers to sometimes understand what they're feeling. And I think that's really important, because sometimes you'll hear and you'll say, what were you thinking? Why would you do that? And they'll say, I don't know. And you think, well, do they really not know? Or are they just telling me that because they want to get out of, not get in trouble? I'm willing to argue that they actually don't always know. And that's confusing. It's confusing for them. just as much as it is for us. I don't know, I think yeah, okay, so I'll just keep going. And again, this was done by using the fMRIs, and the researchers could trace what part of the brain responded, and there was this competing emotions and a difficulty with saying what emotion they felt and what they saw. I think somebody may need to mute their computer because I'm hearing some, I think,
Feedback.
yeah, or maybe some teenagers that are giving me their feedback. So yeah, so I think, again, you should read this and think about it and look at it closely again, because I think what it shows us is not that teenagers are confused, that they're still developing what they think different emotions mean. And that's really important, because sad and angry and scared and excited look and feel similar and complex and complicated for us. They don't know what they feel yet. So think about that when we're putting them or exposing them, and kind of now with all the social media, like, what does that really mean? And what are we doing to them? Is that helpful? Because if they're not sure how they're feeling, are they really able to respond appropriately? So I think that's an important, and especially knowing what we know about the brain, it's important. Okay, so once we begin to understand the biology of the teen brain, I think that's when we can really begin to say, well, okay, we understand there's a lot going on. Things are not quite as simple, smooth, streamlined, and certainly it's nothing like the adult brain, which again, not that long ago, that's what we thought. We thought if we looked at an adult brain and we looked at a teenage brain, they wouldn't be that different. And we're seeing that that's really not true. And so it's important to consider now that what we know, how do we use this information? So, okay. So there's 1,000 slides I could do about this, because there's 1,000 different things that are going on, even outside of the teenager's brain, what they're seeing, what they're experiencing. So I kind of did a little meta-analysis of my own, and I said, okay, what things really I think are the battles that we should be looking at, thinking about, talking about, and really talking to our kids or our patients about. I think sleep is one of the main issues that, and I know that parents will say, he just won't go to sleep. He doesn't want to go to sleep. He's not tired, or he says he's not tired. And I think that that's probably true. There's some shifts that are happening in their internal clock so that they may actually not be tired. But what we do need to do is help them understand ways that they can maybe wind down earlier, and why. So they're going to say, well, I'm not tired and I don't think it's important. They're more motivated to do things that matter to them. Well, there's a few reasons. First of all, the learning part of the brain, where you can, after you've studied all day and now you need to put it in your memory, that happens when you sleep. So I think that's a really powerful thing. So staying up all night and studying will get you less actually than if you study and then get a good night's rest. I think that's a powerful statement. That sleep is definitely not a luxury, and that memory and learning, that is when it's all kind of consolidated together during sleep. And it helps manage stress, which definitely, without question, teenagers do experience stress. They are very, very, very vocal about it. And it's important for us to listen to that. And sleep is, it's hard to quantify, but it's one of the things that I would suggest is if I was going to pick my battle, I would say, this is something that we should look at as a family, or as if it's a client. Let's think about ways to unwind earlier. And even if it's only an hour, what percent is 1 hour of the whole 8 or 9, which they should be getting? They're saying not about 9.5. Unfortunately, one of the biggest kind of recommendations that people make and have made about this is something that's really hard to implement. And that is because of the way their internal clock is kind of going. And if we want to set the stage for success for them, which we do, it would make a lot of sense to start later, start the school day later. Teachers don't like that. Our communities don't like those kinds of changes. But if we can't do that, there was a few examples of successful pushing the SAT back, I think, in a few communities. there's those kinds of things would be really helpful, although those are very, very high policy kind of level things. But without question, talking to teens about why they should be sleeping, it'll help consolidate the learning, which they've just studied, I think matters and matters a lot. And going along with our picking of our battles, there are some battles that are worth picking more than other. And I think the way we do that and how we communicate is really important. You know, they've all heard say no to drugs. They all know what we think, which is it's bad, you know, it's not good for you, drugs. What I don't think they're all aware of is a few things. Because of how active the reward center is in the brain, again, there's a paradox. It's like right around the time when they're being exposed to these really addictive things, whether it's technology, whether it's a drug, whether it's food, whatever it is, the brain is 100% primed to reinforce it with this pruning that's happening with the neurons that we talked about earlier. So if there is something that we should talk about, and I think when we look at what works with talking to kids or teens about this, is helping them understand that, well, we know that just saying no isn't really that powerful to them, but maybe what would be more powerful is saying, you know, one of the things is that we thought IQ was more of a static thing. Well, turns out that in adolescence, you have an opportunity to increase your IQ or decrease it. And when I was looking at the data, the chronic use of marijuana during adolescence has a lot of research that supports that it really decreases the teen's IQ. In the last 5 years, several studies have shown that verbal IQ is especially decreased for people who have been smoking or, you know, marijuana for between certain ages. Starting, the earlier you start, the bigger the effect it was. And again, these patterns show up again and again because it also seems to have a exacerbated effect on decision making and implications for decision making, which I think is really, really important. So as much as I would like for us to say no and for our kids to go ahead and do and say no, we also have to realize that we can't really minimize the subject. And that's one of the things that when I work with clients, I've realized is, you know, they want us to be open to what their experience is, not us saying, well, I know all the teens smoke pot, and that's really something that as I interviewed people before this presentation was really interesting. They want to make their mark and they want you to hear what they think about it. So I think one of the things that we can do is when we talk and we sit down, I think we should not be minimizing the subject. We should be completely kind of open and transparent to what do you think? Like, what do you think about it? Tell me, like, what have you heard? Because without going into too much detail, I think that there is right now an opportunity with all this gray area with marijuana and is it legal federally? Yes, no, certain states more than others. I think it can be a disadvantage for teens not to have some more clear guidance, but maybe we can use it as an opportunity to empower them and say, tell me, what have you heard? Just so you know, that's actually not accurate, or we can help them understand the implications and give them a sense of power over, you know, well, they already know what we think. They already know we think it's not good. So I think what's more important is kind of helping them understand that they can make really informed decisions based on science. And they are paying attention to what we're saying and what, and again, we have to remember their peers have a huge influence. So if their peers are saying different than what we are, that's where it becomes difficult, but an opportunity to communicate and connect with them as well. So that's important. The other, I guess, issue or battle that I would suggest we all think about and maybe spend some time on is stress, and what does that actually mean and look like. And what I noticed when I was speaking to some of my clients, and if I think about, you know, the kids I know, the teenagers, is that because their emotional stress or emotion, they're very aware, their heightened sense of their emotions, which we talked about being based in the brain, is so high that the things that we may think are causing stress or creating stress for him or her, and what actually is what they are experiencing as stress can be two very different things. And so this is where I think the onus is on us, whether we're an adult, whether we're a teacher, whether we're, a parent, whatever seat we're sitting in, but we are the adult, is I think we need to be really careful not to label their stress or their experience. What we need to be listening for is them telling us what their experience of the stressor is. Often parents will say, I think this, it's just too much of the workload, the school load is too much. But then you sit with the child or with the teenager and you say, so what's really stressing you out? And you'll hear that it's something like, some drama in their peer group, and the school stuff she's able to handle or he's able to handle. It's more about what their emotional reactivity is strongest to. I can't stress this enough, because if we're talking to teenagers and we're going into the room and we're having our own agenda with what we think stress is about, I think we're completely missing the boat. And I think we're really missing an opportunity to engage. And they will remember that missed opportunity. They are probably, when they're thinking about stressors, are thinking more about rejection from peers, not fitting in, bullying. I think yes, grades are important, but I would venture to guess that often what is on their mind is how they look compared to their friends. And I think again, the onus is on us to meet them where they're at. If we go into the conversation with our opinion, we will miss an opportunity to connect. Especially when we talk about resilience and stress. Resilience is not something that you're either born with or that you're not. It's actually something that can be learned. And for this reason, while particularly vulnerable to the negative effects of stress, we can help our teens, again, whether they're our clients, our students, our friends, our nieces or nephews, we can actually empower them and help them become better equipped to handle what stress they know as stress and what makes them feel vulnerable. And I think it can be a window of opportunity to say, tell me how you feel. What is it? And a lot of times, because they do need to feel like they belong, it is about peers. And I think we can say things like, I don't know exactly how you're feeling, but I know how bad it feels to eat lunch alone, or I know how bad it feels to feel like I'm not one with the group. And letting them kind of take on the goal setting, or at least setting the stage for us to understand them. If understanding what their rejection feels like and what that translates into as far as stress for them, and helping them feel that there's a whole opportunity to grow resilience. It is a powerful, powerful time. They can choose their response. And especially if, as a parent, if you you kind of sit back and you think, okay, I'm not going to be reactive. I'm going to be more open. I'm going to listen. I'm not going to put my ideals or my thoughts onto them. One client said to me, before I even opened my mouth, my mom and my dad already told me that they knew I was going to be this way because alcoholism ran in my family. So those kinds of comments, they weigh heavily on the teens. And actually, I would argue, have some kind of unfortunate, often influence or predetermination on how the teen is going to feel about himself and his ability to not be an alcoholic in this example. So I think helping them understand that they can have control and taking some of that control is important. So this is a hot topic right now, and I wish I had a great answer for this. Unfortunately, teenagers are big with their technology. I think adults are too, for that matter. And we have to help educate them and help kind of level the playing field. I think what I found is when families say no technology or no phone, especially as adolescents, we're really kind of putting them in a no-win situation. If they're feeling that they need to be part, like we said, about being part of a group and be a member and belong, and yet we're taking away their form of communication, which apparently, if everybody else in their class is using it, I think if I put myself in his or her shoes, I would feel pretty vulnerable and out of the loop and out of the mix. So I think we really need to look at carefully, how do we help them use technology right? How do we help them understand what technology can do? Why is it so powerful? This has been a really interesting time because there's been a lot of new things that have been coming out. on YouTube. And it does kind of do this whole dopamine thing where there is this reward center, and teenagers are very vulnerable to that. And we know that. So letting them know that this is a time where, technology knows what to do to kind of hook you as a teenager. So use it wisely, or maybe don't use it until you've finished doing these things, and then, make a list and kind of, so you can kind of check things off as you go. I think the idea that they have to make really important choices about being savvy and how to use technology. And there's such a huge range of mixed opinions that it can be very confusing. So as a family or as a clinician or as a teacher, I think empathizing and saying, I know it's really an easy way to connect. I know it feels really good sometimes to just connect real quick. And it feels like, some kids, they can't, there's a book about this and it said like they take it everywhere. They're back to having like it's almost like a pacifier. They're back to taking their lovey or they need their phone. They can't live without it. And I'm just as guilty as everybody else, but I think being aware of that, I feel, saying, I feel the same way you do. I understand that I want it. I need to connect, but technology is really another opportunity for novelty seeking. And because the brain of a teenager is so easy to stimulate, it doesn't take much for the technology to kind of tease the brain into distraction. And one of the interesting parts and it's on this slide here is what it does to teenagers is sometimes makes them feel like they're really good at multitasking. They can do their homework, they can play a game on this computer or the gaming computer, they can talk to their friend on their phone. And what we now know is that really this is like a fake it's not accurate reflection of what's really happening. They make the teenagers feel that they're doing better because they feel like they're getting more accomplished, but the accuracy that they're doing things, or actually the length of time and how much productive work is being done is much, 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 much lower. So it almost begs parents and kids or, clinicians to think about, help them, the teenager, make a decision about how much time do you really think is fair? They might say 7 hours. We obviously would probably not agree. So let's talk about maybe, do you want 2 hours a day? But do that after you've kind of finished your to-do list. I think empowering them with these skills that we want to reinforce is something that I can't stress enough, because these are skills that they will go on and take forever with them. And also then they'll be reinforcing the right stuff anyways. Oh, and I should say, it's not on here, the technology risk has kind of a more insult to injury if it's being done without any kind of limitations right before bed. And as we talk about sleep, we can think about our previous slide on sleep. And if kids are getting hooked into a YouTube or a chat or whatever on their phone, it does disrupt the opportunity for restful sleep right after. So we may be adding actually more stress inadvertently, and they should know about that. They should be very aware of that, and they should understand why we're concerned. We're not concerned because we want to control them. We're concerned because we want them to be able to quiet their brain in a reasonable amount of time before bed. So this is a very important thing. I think the question isn't how do I prevent my teen from engaging in any risk? It becomes how do I help him or her face risks more safely? I feel very strongly about this. I think that when we come to our teenagers, in any position, if we come at them with unrealistic expectations or kind of these like very drastic black and white rules, like no phone ever, or, I don't think that we help them self-regulate. I don't think that we really help them face less risks. I think we are in actuality adding more stress to them. What becomes very clear to me, though, is that we need to have some real conversations with them and help them understand the data. This is what's happening in your brain. You may not know this. So let's look at what that means for you, because they're peers and we should not downplay what that means. Your peers are important to you. I get it. That's your group. You need them. You want to be part of them, part of that party. But can you do that without engaging in the risky behavior at the party? There might be, and this is where parents have to the adults need to kind of also think, okay, what's a middle ground? What can I live with? What are the choices? How can I balance the risk and the reward for him or her, and putting him in a position that he's with his friends, he or she is engaging, yet they are able to kind of handle their risks better or more prepared anyways. Oh, that was fancy. Okay. So I spent a little bit of time talking to some teenagers, and I thought it was very interesting. Some of the quotes are direct quotes. So talking to teens directly and frankly about their brain development and letting them know that these are very, very real feelings they're having. They do really feel bad. It is true. So playing it down does not work. We should empathize with them and say that felt really bad or that feels really good. But speaking frankly with them and sharing the information, I think that the data that we have now from the fMRIs and knowing what we know about the brain, it may not drastically change someone, but it could definitely become information that they will consider. And we should make it more readily, they should be able to use it, read it, and understand it. And so one of the quotes was, "Don't protect us from everything, or we won't be able to deal with anything. Explain it to us." So again, these are quotes that I got from teenagers. That I think was an important one. So they don't, well, we think we're doing them a favor sometimes by not even exposing them to X or Y. In actuality, they really feel like, I wanted to understand it. You didn't give me a chance to. Can you help me? Let me understand it. Don't protect me from everything. Also, an important point to consider is that they're not doing anything purposely to make the adult, the teacher, the mom, the dad, or the clinician mad. They're not doing this to us. They're not trying to be rude. They're not trying to be kind of secretive. They themselves are really trying to understand this. They're trying to make sense of this. It's happening to them. And I thought this was an interesting quote. "I am not a mini version of you. I have my own thoughts, my feelings, dreams, and emotions. It doesn't mean I hate you." So I think that that's a really powerful quote, because sometimes, you know, if there is a client or a teenager who's kind of like pushing away from the parents or from the primary caregiver, the parents say like, "He doesn't need me anymore. What did I do wrong? He doesn't love me," or "she doesn't." And that's really, really not the case. What the case is that they need some time. They're trying to figure things out, and they're not looking to us to give them every answer. It doesn't mean they don't need us. It doesn't mean they don't love us. It doesn't mean they don't want to be with us. It just means that they're trying to figure some pretty complicated stuff going on. And another one is, "I feel bad when I disappoint you. I'm not trying to make you mad. I'm sorry." And we often see this after there's been something that happens and there's kind of a calming down period, and then they come back and they apologize. And we should be very, forgiving, and allow them to know that they can rest easy kind of in our understanding that we all act certain ways. Sometimes we're not always in control, but they feel bad when they disappoint us. They do, and they're not purposely doing that. That was some important quotes. Okay. I'm missing a page here, but okay. So what else can we do? We can talk to them frankly. We looked at this one already. There must be doubles. I'm sorry. There we go. This is what I wanted. Okay. This is an important, this was something that like 5 of the teenagers I spoke to told me in different words. Their privacy. They feel very, very strongly about their right to privacy. And actually, I think they feel almost angry that we say, some adults or people think, well, I'm doing it to help them. I don't want them to do something risky. Well, they feel like we don't trust them when we're doing that, when we kind of invade their privacy. So I guess we can show them trust by allowing them to have some privacy, to trusting that they are trustworthy. And one of the quotes was, "Just because I don't want you going through my phone doesn't mean I have something to hide. It means that it's an invasion of my privacy," which I think is an important point, right? If they're trying to become more autonomous and we're kind of getting their login information, how are they going to learn to be more responsible and autonomous? At some point, we need to respect their privacy too. And this is, of course, with the caveat, knowing that they're going through some tough stuff. And if we think it is something that's really risky or dangerous, we would explain that to them and then help them understand why we needed to know something. But for the general guidance, I would say respect their privacy. It's really important. Another quote was, I'm actually a good kid. If you saw what some other people my age were up to, you'd be thankful to have me. So I think, again, there's this feeling like we're not giving them an opportunity to show us how good they are because we've already decided how bad they are, and kind of allowing them to show us or allowing us to be proud of them without us kind of infringing on their individual right to kind of grow and learn and experience and make some mistakes. It really is an infringement, what they think, on their privacy, and that's important. More of what we can do is we can give them the benefit of the doubt. If you've already decided that the teenager is guilty or that they're lying, then really the teenager says, I have nothing to prove. You've already decided that I'm a bad kid. You're taking my phone away no matter what. What does it matter? So I think that one of the ways that we can help them is to say, show me, tell me. Don't say, why did you do that? Say, what happened? Give them an opportunity to explain what happened before we go in, kind of like, and again, that takes some growing up to do for some of the adults too. Instead of reacting and responding quickly, first we have to remember that, they're coming in with their story, and if we're not ready to hear it, then I would say put it off for another hour when you're ready to, because we owe it to them to listen. And they've also said, I'm not a mini version of you. I have my, I read this one, I'm sorry. I have my own dreams, feelings, thoughts, and emotions. And I think that this last one is important. Lots of adults think we're faking mental illness for attention and claim we aren't old enough or stressed enough to have them, but we are. School, friends, and sports, family, and more is a lot to deal with at this age. So that's really important. And we can also explain to them that sometimes things feel really bad, and that necessarily doesn't meet the criteria for a clinical, depression, but we really aren't knowledgeable on what they're feeling. Only they are. So if we go at it with a much more collaborative and an open attitude of tell me, help me, tell me what it feels like. Why are you so mad? What happened? Tell me. And I think it opens these opportunities for connections. And our final note here is your children are changing and also trying to figure themselves out. Their brains and their bodies are undergoing extensive reorganization. Their apparent recklessness, rudeness, and cluelessness are not totally their fault. Almost all of this is neurologically, psychologically, and physiologically explained. As a parent or educator, you need to remind yourself of this daily, often hourly. And I will read this and reread this and remind myself of this, because if we do think about it and we take the blame away from them and help them understand why they're not a bad kid, but what they're feeling is real and it has a biological basis in the brain, I think we begin to kind of come at them or with them together as a collaborative problem solving, saying, help me understand it. Because the truth is from what we've just reviewed and learned, is that the brain is going through some really heavy duty lifting and changing and reorganizing. And they can be really big part of the positive changes that they can make in their brains. And likewise, there's vulnerabilities that go with this. So this is an exciting time, confusing time. And I think the kids and the teenagers, they need us to be there and kind of be supportive. And thankfully we have a bunch of collaborators now that we can always, count on as at least a clinician myself. I know the school counselor I can call, I know I can call my colleagues, and hopefully that same kind of connection making is what our teens have to kind of navigate these sometimes turbulent waters. So that is my whole presentation.
We can open it up to questions. Does anybody have questions for Lizzie?
Hours later,
Okay.
Karen called me again, and I was told, they said they were going to call Andy. Okay, no problem, whatever. Karen called me like 2 hours later, and I was
So you all have the ability to unmute yourselves if you have a question.
I have a question. And this is a question that I guess a lot of the parents have, and after seeing your presentation, it's kind of like I guess a cross section for me and trying to understand how to better understand adolescents and their development through their brain development. But how do you I guess how do you suggest that especially parents that are dealing with issues, having to explain the importance of social media, by giving them enough space to figure it out, but also having a consistent, I guess, parenting to govern some of the behaviors? How would you suggest addressing some of those issues without being too overbearing, but also giving enough space for the kids to kind of figure out their development on their own?
Right. So I can really appreciate that question and understand where you're coming from, because I think regardless of it's a parent or a counselor, there is this like fine line we walk between we want them to know there's a safety net and there's things that we're going to be able to help them with. And yet we want to give them these wings to try and experiment. At the same time, the best advice that I found has helped is to use the kind of examples that I know are real and say, there are a lot of opportunities to do really good connections on the internet, or, whether it's chatting or whatever, but there's also a few really poignant. And I know, my particular kids like sports a lot. So I've been able to say, look at this athlete who actually lost his scholarship. And this is not a lie. These are, of course, do not lie. If you don't know these examples, do not use them. But, using words and examples that they care about. I mean, to my kids, that was kind of incomprehensible. How does an athlete, he lost his whole scholarship to go to college because of something that went on on the internet, and it's not private and it's not secret, and it got out there, and then this, so I think, unfortunately, there's no great answer for this other than, I think, keeping the connection open and really, really being very frank about it. I think that sometimes because we don't know how to say something, we might tiptoe around kind of the words and being very appropriate. And I think that sometimes how we dress it up takes away from the actual content. So I think connecting with them in a very real sense, like, look, he wanted to see that, he did this too. He asked his girlfriend for this, she did this, and giving some really, really, and almost like that. I think that we have to take that shock factor away. I think that parents need to be willing to really have some really real conversations that can be uncomfortable, like saying certain things feels weird, but if we take that shock factor away, I think that they'll be more willing to connect with us when it does happen to them, when someone does ask them for something that's inappropriate, or so again, authentically connecting and using some really real life examples would be what I would say.
And I have one more question. I'm sorry to take up you guys' time in the question portion of this presentation, but we just had a parent meeting at our site, and we were, some of the parents did suggest that, even for like Instagram, that they log on, they have they also log onto their devices, so they know that their kids are logging on to Instagram or what kind of activity is happening. But even in that, we found out there's this new site called monkey.pool that allows these kids to connect with kids from all over the world, but also adults. And it's supposed to be an age appropriate site for 18 and over, but what we're noticing now are kids as early as 12 and 13 are signing on and connecting with adults that are doing lewd acts on the webcam. So I guess I'm also out to you guys, how would you suggest that I kind of direct parents to safeguarding their kids from those kind of activities on the internet?
Right. So, this is kind of a really controversial type of area, because, I'm of the philosophy that if we, show our kids that we don't trust them, then they have no reason to show us that we should trust them. If we're, if we have our kids and this is it depends highly on like the situation, the child, them. So I feel two ways about it. My first choice would be to tell the teenager, like, you may be going into this totally innocently, and you are. I mean, we should always give them that benefit of the doubt. And I know you are. You are going on there to connect with a friend or whatever. But these people, there are people out there, because I was really surprised with a few of the kids I work with when I told them that there were some instances where adults were, on these sites and were kind of, preying on, they were like shocked that these people exist. They were like, why? That's gross. And I said, well, I don't know why, but what we do know is that there is a lot of, different reasons in biology and trauma that would maybe make, there's different things that are happening. So you don't know all about these you don't know all about these adults that are on the other end, and helping them in that. And then I don't know about this, and I'm not saying that you should do this. I'm just saying my son was just shown at school, I think, a really good video, or I think it's a show, it's called Social Impact maybe. And I don't know how other kids will react. I have not seen the whole thing myself. I will say that for my teenager, when he watched it, he had a very strong reaction and was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea that this was the way it was being done, or this is how much information people could get on me. And he's a little bit extreme, but he deleted social media from his phone, all of it. And that might not be the right answer, right? We need to teach them moderation. But I thought that was a really powerful, a very, very, very powerful video that he had an opportunity to watch. And I think it's called The Social Impact. Well, that's a little, yeah, I think so. Choices, yeah. Okay.
Lizzie, they're called Social Dilemma on Netflix.
That's what
Absolutely.
it is.
Yep.
I'm sorry, I missed, yes, I'm sorry, thank you. Yes, that was a very, very powerful. I think it also, because it showed them that we're gonna let them make their own decisions, even though it reminds me of when you say, what do you want for dinner? But really you're giving them two choices, steak or chicken, because you want them to eat protein, but they feel like they're making the decision. I think that social dilemma kind of made them feel empowered. And I was really grateful for the school that they did that, because not hearing it from me, but hearing it there blew their minds. And him and his friends took it off of their phone. So that was a positive thing, and empowered them.
Anybody else have any questions? So before we wrap it up, I want to thank you all again for coming. I'd like to thank Lizzie for our presentation. You did an excellent job. I'd like to thank Lisa Dean for helping me organize this. I put Lisa's contact information in the group chat. You all have my confirmation, or my contact information from all of the emails. For CEs, for the Florida Board of School Psychology, the Florida Board of Psychology, the Florida Board of Nursing, and the Florida Board of Clinical Social Work, Marriage and Family Therapy, and Mental Health Counseling, if you email me your name and your license number with the letters in front of it, I will submit that to the CE broker, and they will post your account. If you need a certificate of completion, I can email that out to you as well. I can't save the group chat, so if you put your information in there, I won't get it. I'll need you to email it to me. I see a lot of people have already sent me emails, and we should get those posted hopefully by the end of the week.
Thank you so much
Again,
for the opportunity.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye
It's a
now.
good program.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.